Well, we come to the end of a perfect 2 days. I hope you're as happy and as thrilled about this rally as I am. It has been heart-rending and soul satisfying to see all you people. I never had a bigger thrill than I did this afternoon when I sat up here and saw this auditorium absolutely crowded and most of the boxes filled. To think on a long weekend, the 4th of July, which is our most national holiday, a family day when people visit families and all like that, to think that you folks that were here today gave up this weekend and gave up going to see your parents and going to the farm and the Cape and all those places and came across country in the real hot weather and all like that to come to Boston to spend 2 days with us at your own expense. It was a great expense and a sacrifice and all that for believing to try to save what we hold so dear and what we're so afraid of losing. The committee has put in a great deal of work. It was a work of love and labor. It was a labor of love. And we know each and every one of you, we feel personally, all the heads of the organizations who came and manned their boots and all the people who have worked so hard sending us lists of people and all the volunteers that came and addressed envelopes and made records and files and all like that. To them all, we are very, very grateful. I'm especially grateful. I know the members of the New England Rally Committee are very, very grateful for Colonel Bunker, for his leadership, his guidance, his making us all work hard. I think I said this before, but I think it bears repeating. Last year I've learned a lot from Colonel Bunker. Last year I was saying, going to try to do something. I said, but I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before. And he said, well, have you ever tried? And I said, no. And he said, well, how do you know you can't do it then? He said, why don't you try? So everything I do now that I feel so I can't do, well, at least I try, so I have learned a great deal. To Arthur Daly and Fred Perkins, who have been absolutely magnificent. Fred, won't you stand up, and is Arthur here? As you know, these are the 2 police officers who started this business and made me world famous. Fred is a sign painter, and he's never painted more. He's a policeman, but he does do sign painting. He's never made more signs, I know, in his life. To Fred made this he's been painting bookmobiles, and he's been making signs for the tops of bookmobiles, and some of Fred's work is all over the United States. He's been sending things to Oklahoma and down to Texas and to California. The minute they see one of Fred's roof signs, then they want some. And so it's been really, truly wonderful. To the people who really started this rally, you know, we had contributions at first, and 8 people pledged $100, and that's what we started on. Fred was one, Arthur was another one, just little people. We had Ann Riley, a school teacher, all pledged $100, and that gave us our first money to start on. And of course, you know, the whole thing is run by volunteers. We don't have any paid staff. And we spend our money as we get it, and it's really been a lot of fun. Of course, you know, yesterday morning we had a mass at 8 o'clock at Our Lady of Victory Church that was said by Father Monsignor Clary. And Friday night I said to him, ordinarily they don't preach sermons at daily masses, but I said to Monsignor Clary, will you give a little sermon? And he said, oh, I don't think the pastor may like it. And I said, well, it's the 4th of July. He wouldn't have any objections to you talking about a little patriotic talk. Well, I wasn't able to go. We were so busy yesterday morning on registration and all, but the people, when they came back from 8 o'clock Mass, they were all crying. Men were standing in the lobby down there, coming over to me, tears splashing down their face. And a lot of them weren't Catholics. And they said they never heard a more beautiful sermon than Monsignor Clary gave. He talked about the Constitution of the United States. And he repeated the whole Constitution. And then he pointed out to them that God is mentioned 4 times in the Constitution. And then he had them all recite the Constitution after him at Mass yesterday. It was a very unique Mass, I imagine. But they... And then this morning, Father Van Grohl said the 8 o'clock Mass. Now, of course, this isn't all Catholic. Most of the people here are non-Catholics, but it just happened to be that we had these 2 Catholic priests here, and they do have to say Mass every morning anyway. And so whether you were Catholic or not Catholic, why, you came this morning at 7:45. Mary Kane, one of our speakers, who said she's a good Southern Baptist, was waiting for me at the newsstand to go down to 8 o'clock Mass. And it's just been loads of fun. We, in this organization, for God and Country, it doesn't make any difference whether you're Protestant, Catholic, Jew, or Gentile. It doesn't make any difference whether you're white or Negro. We're all children of God, and we're all the same. And I said this afternoon, I started to say about the beautiful flowers that we had on the platform, and that they were at the head table for a testimonial dinner that we had for Robert Welch last night, and close to 600 people came. We made reservations for 500, and the waiters had us set up a number of extra tables. And for you who was here, for you folks who were here, I know you'll never forget last night. I think was one of the finest dinners and one of the best testimonials that was ever given to anybody. Colonel Bunker was the chairman of it, and he thought of everything in minute detail. We had a champagne parade, and it was absolutely wonderful to see the waiters all parading around with bottles of champagne for the table. Of course, most of the people here are white ribbon people, but last night, well, they drank some champagne. And then a number of people brought little gifts for Robert Welch. It was sort of something that was gotten up at the spur of the moment. And we had a cake for Robert Welch. This is Your Life, Robert Welch, and it was a 6-tier cake. And there's about 20 different important episodes in his life, starting when he was 4 years old. His father, they moved to a new plantation down North Carolina, and there's a water pump on the land, and Robert Welch had never seen one. So a little boy, 4 years old, was fascinated with it. And he went and filled every pot and pan and kettle and dipper in the house with water, much to the dismay of his mother and the rest of the people down there. And then it went on to tell that when he was 6 years old, his father raised cotton and had this wonderful prize cotton that he was so thrilled about, and was having all the neighbors come to see all these, well, I guess they're flowers, aren't they, before the cotton comes. And Robert Welch had heard so much about it, he took the scissors and went out and cut off every single blossom. And so, as the Ken Courtney, who told the story of This Is Your Life, Robert Welch, said that George Washington became famous for cutting down his father's cherry tree, but Robert Welch cut down his father's cotton blossoms. And it was really wonderful. Then he went on to tell different episodes of his life until it came when Robert Welch founded the John Birch Society, when 11 men and he met in Indianapolis for 2 days while he talked to them and told them the condition of the country and how worried he was about it and how he was planning on following this organization. And the last thing he said to them, probably not one of you men will want to join me, but if you don't, I'll go out and I'll get more men and I'll talk to more people until I finally get some people who really will believe me. But before the 11 men left, they all signed and started the John Birch Society. And then told about he wrote the book, May God Forgive Us, and then he wrote the book One Man's Opinion, which later turned into American Opinion. And so all those things were on the cake, and Ken Courtney told about them, and it was, people were crying and people were happy, and it was a very nice. Then it ended up at the end of the cake, there was a pair of bed slippers and a cane and a cigar. So those are the things that Robert, he wears bed slippers around, and he uses a cane, and he smokes a cigar. So it was a lot of fun. Everybody enjoyed it. And, well, I'm telling you this big long story to tell you about the flowers. The flowers were on the head table, and it was a magnificently decorated table. Everybody who was here said they had never seen such a gorgeous table. Well, it was one of our John Birch members, Mr. Nolan from North Attleboro, who had the table decorated. And this was his gift. And Mr. Joe Sullivan, who is the printer for Mr. Welch, donated the programs, and everything about the dinner mostly has been donated. And well, it was just love and affection. We have, Colonel Bunker has, and I've seen most of them, hundreds and hundreds of letters from all over the United States paying tribute to Mr. Welch. Most of the letters are from people who couldn't come. College, university presidents, heads of hospitals, manufacturers, heads of industry, all over the United States paying tribute to Mr. Welch, and I know that they're all going to be bound and given to Mr. Welch, but he'll get a great deal of pleasure from it. Now, we had a guest book for the guests who were here last night. Now, a great many of the guests didn't sign it, and the book is in the Hancock room at the end of the room here that we use for an office. So if anybody who was at the dinner didn't sign it, I wish they would. Then if there's any dear friends of Mr. Welch's here who really love him and would like to sign the book, I'm sure he would be very happy to have you do so. So between tonight and tomorrow morning, when you check out, before you check out, if you'd like to sign it, preferably tonight, we'd be very happy, because we want to give this book to Mr. Welch with all these signatures on it. Then, as I started to say, a number of people brought some gifts, and they were funny gifts and all kinds of things, so they wheeled them in, and they were over there, and all of us, after it was all over, I happened to be talking to Mr. Welch, and all of a sudden he looked down, and he said, "Well, where's my gifts?" And I said, "Well, they've wheeled the table out, and they're down the Hancock room." And he said, "Well, is anybody watching the gifts?" He said, "Because somebody might take them." And I said, "Well, I'm sure they're all right, because they were all locked up and everything." So later on, we went down to the Hancock room because he wanted to take his gifts home. Well, most people, when they're tired and late at night, would say, "Well, send them over tomorrow." But that wasn't Mr. Welch. He wanted to take them home with him. So he said to get a boy and a cart, and so they came up with the cart, and Mr. Welch personally took every gift and placed it on the cart. He wouldn't allow anybody to touch it. There was a lot of envelopes and a lot of things where he could have bundled them together, and we were all tired, and we sort of hoped he would. But he just took every envelope and laid it down, and then took another one later. Then after it was all piled up, he said, "Well, now what's going to happen if some of these fall out?" And I said, "Well, John will follow the cart, and if any fall, but it was, I just say this because it was so humorous, and he was just like a little boy, so I guess all men are just little boys grown up. I don't know why I'm saying all this and talking about the John Birch Society, because this rally has nothing to do with the John Birch Society. But I do know that there are some John Birches here, and I thought you might be interested in hearing it. Don't keep applauding, because I'll go on forever. He says I better not. I just want to say, in the last thing about Robert Welch, that I think it's a wonderful tribute to any man to be able to mobilize a whole country, that people all over the United States that love and have such affection for Robert Welch, carry out his ideals and his principles, and every John Bircher I meet say they feel as though they belong to one family. He's been able to do what no church that I know has been able to do, that have been going on for centuries. And so many wonderful people have told me that they feel as though Robert Welch is inspired by God. and I'm sure he is. I feel as though we should have a rally like this every year in Boston. Of course, I know what Colonel Bunker will say. He'll say, well, you're going to have to find a new chairman. Who are you going to have for your chairman next year? Well, if he wasn't the chairman, I couldn't have any rally. Well, if you folks are interested in having another rally, tell Colonel Bunker, and then pledge your support and promise to come next year. And next year it'll be so much easier, just like Mr. Welch was talking about last night. After you've committed your first murder, the next easy. And so after you've had one rally, then it keeps getting easier, and by the next one will be just a breeze. Someone said to my son John the other day, who's been working on the rally, well, John, you'll be so glad when this is over. And he said, well, yes, but he said, then we'll be just starting on the next one. All right, I'm not going to say any more except to say how grateful I am to you all for coming.
As usual, Anna has left me nothing to say except thank you again. And I hope you'll come to her next rally. And with that, and may we ask Father Bingham Grove to come.
By way of making amends for my very long-winded meditation yesterday morning, also by way of apologizing to my liberal friend out in the lobby for my slip of the tongue, and also for being here. I was supposed to be ashamed of being here. I'm very proud. We'll make this very short, and as you leave here, it's a certain sadness. We've made friends. We hate to part. So as your kind hearts and gentle people leave here and fall in among the love-mongers, as Reverend Oliver calls them, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be ever at your back. And may the good Lord always hold you in the hollow of his hand. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.